Welcome back to Analytical Strategy. Today we are going to be discussing the 5 most iconic Final 3s, focusing specifically on all-newbie casts in Survivor. Previously we've discussed the returnee seasons, and if you are yet to see that video it will be linked at the end of this discussion. But for now it is time to move into the newbie casts. When creating the all-returnee list I found it pretty straightforward and I didn't feel like there were any really tough choices to make. But for the all-newbie list there were actually some surprising omissions for me. A couple of the Final 3s I thought would definitely be in there when I was constructing this concept didn't make the cut after I broke each season down. Feel free to put a comment down below if you agree or disagree with these rankings, as I think this topic may have some more diverse opinions in comparison to the returnee seasons. So firstly, I'm going to be discussing Pearl Islands as my 5th most iconic newbie Final 3, with Sandra, Lil and Fairplay rounding it out. Now this was a very close call for me and I had to leave out 2 big seasons in this spot, and they were Tocantins and David vs Goliath. Without going to those in too much detail, I think David vs Goliath is one of the best seasons ever, and when we get to see players like Angelina come back for a second time, this could definitely move up the ranks. But for now, when we think of iconic, Nick and Mike compared to the likes of Sandra and Fairplay just don't compare just yet. Similarly with Tocantins, it was ridiculously hard to leave out a season with JT and Fishback off this list, but it came down to comparing those two to Sandra and Fairplay, and they just got pipped at the post for this 5th spot. Now getting into Pearl Islands, we have Sandra, who at the time of winning this season wasn't seen as that high of a top tier winner, but when she came back and took out the crown again was when she was really recognised for her game. She was also a game changer, a mentor in Island of the Idols, and a member of Winners at War, so there is no doubt that Sandra is one of the most iconic players in Survivor history. And then we have Lil, who really isn't too huge of a name when we think of Survivor, but she was one of the first 2 castaways to ever return to the game due to the Outcast twist, and was the first to return and make it all the way to the final tribal. And of course there is Johnny Fairplay, one of the original villains of Survivor, and he has most certainly etched his name in the Survivor history books. His dead grandmother lie may be the most iconic scene of the show's 20-year history. So when it comes to an iconic Final 3, he rounds it out perfectly. I would love to see him come back all of these years later in a Legends or Fallen Angel season and see if he still has what it takes to be an all-time great player. So the next Final 3 is the original in Survivor history, and that is obviously from Survivor Borneo, the first season with Hatch, Kelly and Rudy. Season 1 is a hugely iconic season in its own right in Survivor, being the building blocks and foundation for how the show has evolved and therefore is played today. The Final 3 was a huge Final 3 within this season, with each of them getting the chance to come back and return in All-Stars and Second Chance seasons. Hatch is the very first winner of this game, and played a game well ahead of its time, forming alliances before that concept existed, and making highly intelligent moves, such as throwing the Final 3 immunity challenge, which single-handedly resulted in him winning the game. He was a key cog of all Survivor players, and he is a massively iconic player in Survivor history. Then there was Wigglesworth, the first ever runner-up and missing out on the first $1 million prize by just 1 vote. She was a challenge beast, winning 4 immunities and still to this day holds the record for the most immunities ever won by a woman in Survivor. And if that isn't iconic, I don't know what is. Kelly was able to return 15 years later for Survivor Second Chance and still played with this old school strategy by forming close social relationships with high levels of loyalty, but ultimately this caused her to be voted out as she was such a big jury threat. And of course there was Rudy, who was able to form a close relationship with Richard Hatch throughout their duration in Survivor Borneo, and was arguably the biggest jury threat out of this Final 3 if he was able to make it to the end. He got the chance to return in Survivor All-Stars, but as he was put on the dreaded Saboga tribe, his days were numbered, being the oldest player in the game. As he is still the oldest contestant to ever play Survivor, Rudy inspired so many people all around the world, and may he rest in peace. So up next we have the Final 3 from Survivor Cagayan, and yes, that is Tony, Wu and Kass. All 3 of these contestants are highly remembered within the Survivor community and all played on very different levels of strategy to get themselves to the end. Tony is probably my favourite player and character in the history of Survivor. The dude is just so entertaining on so many levels. He's obviously a strategic force in the game, constantly thinking, and he's up all night trying to plan for the coming days in the game. But he is also a fantastic character, giving constant, hilarious moments. And after Winners of War, to me, he's the best player that has ever played the game. So up next we have Wu, the runner-up of this season, after making a very questionable decision in taking Tony to the end over over Kass. But again, you have to give massive props to Tony for being able to convince Wu to do so. Wu played a very loyal game, and he was a fan favourite for his ninja stealth mode and all-around gentle and humble personality. This scored him a shot on Survivor's second chance to have another crack at the grand prize, as did Kass. Kass was an amazing character in Survivor Cagayan, and really she is a pretty underrated player overall. The tribal where she switched up her vote, causing 2 incorrect idle plays, and positioned herself to be the swing vote instead of Sarah, was up there with my favourite tribal of all time. All 3 of these characters are iconic in Survivor, and having a final 3 of Tony, Wu and Kass is what makes the season of Survivor Cagayan so fantastic. So moving on to my second spot, we have Survivor Kaoh Rong, featuring 3 huge names in Michele, Aubry and Todd. This is another season where each player in this final 3 immediately made a name for themselves, and given this is one of the more recent seasons and we have seen each of them return at least once each, it just shows how big of an impact they had on the Survivor community. So Michele was crowned as the winner of Survivor Kaoh Rong, with some saying that she really didn't deserve to win it once this season was finished being televised. But after time, viewers began to realise how good of a social player Michele was and is in Survivor. And this was again demonstrated within Winners at War, with her being able to make it all the way to the end again. So the runner-up in Aubry has had the privilege of returning to the game twice since this season has aired, playing a total of 3 times within the space of 7 seasons, which just shows how much of an impact she's had on the community and the Survivor production team. She turned from this anxious individual who was really overwhelmed in the early stages of the game, to an extremely confident woman who has a really smart, strategic brain for the game, and it was a really amazing journey to see. And of course the beloved Todd, the man who thought the production team had made a mistake by putting him on the beauty tribe, but we all soon realised how gentle of a soul Todd is. He is without question one of the best idol finders the game has ever seen to date. He is another contestant who has been able to make the final 3 multiple times to pitch their case to the jury. Given Kaoh Rong was only 8 seasons ago, and each of these 3 castaways have made deep runs into the game multiple times, just shows that they all have a great skill set for the game of Survivor, and I am sure we will see all of them again in future seasons of the game. And finally, for me, the number 1 most iconic final 3 in a newbie season is from Survivor China, and that is of course Todd, Courtney and Amanda. Again, this is a 3 where each of them is a big name in the Survivor community, and are some massive favourites amongst fans. Todd to me played an extremely high level winning game, aligning with a group of people so he was the middleman that was never targeted, and really made all of the big strategic decisions in the game along with his partner in crime, Amanda. Amanda was probably the favourite to win this season going into the final tribal, which really shows how good of a player she is, but Todd was able to give probably the best final tribal council performance of all time, and turn the tide to take out the title of Sole Survivor. These 2 are phenomenal players and are iconic in the game's history. Then of course we have the wonderful Courtney, who even surprised herself about how well she did in the game of Survivor. Her final tribal council performance as well should not go unnoticed, almost being able to pip Todd at the end to win the game. Courtney also is just one of the best characters the game has ever seen, an absolutely hilarious individual who has little to no filter, and that just lightens up the show in general. If you haven't already, check out a fellow YouTuber, Eager Turtle, and his videos Courtney tearing people to shreds and the Queen of Jury Reactions, and in those videos alone you'll be able to see how iconic Courtney is. These 3 are all very different, but amazing in their own way, and therefore deserve the spot as the most iconic final 3 from a newbie season in Survivor history. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I'd be interested to hear if you agree with these rankings. Would you have slotted in Token Cheems or David vs Goliath above any of these seasons? Let me know in the comments. If you are enjoying the content, remember to smash like and subscribe, with new videos coming out multiple times a week. This is Analytical Strategy and we are signing out once again. I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.